What's good, everybody? YouTube, Bitcoiners, iFunny. I'm gonna take this toke real quick, and then I'm gonna put you guys on the game. Now, most people don't actually find Bitcoin. Bitcoin finds them. What do I mean by that? Like I've mentioned in previous videos, it's very hard to orange pill somebody who does not feel the need for a solution to their problems. People who aren't financially struggling don't even think about Bitcoin. That's why it's way easier to orange pill people who are already poor or in the working class compared to someone who's middle class or a millionaire. But anyways, this is about how Bitcoin discovered me, I guess you could say. It was a bit over, about 3 years ago. I was taking a shit on the toilet when I had the idea to buy Bitcoin. And thus I did. But before Bitcoin, what was this Gary person doing? Well, I woke up at about 12 years old and was like, I'm poor. And I wanted to figure out why that was, And so from ages 12 to 14, I voluntarily in my free time began studying economics and personal finance, no cap. And then at 14 years old, I started cutting grass for this guy who I went to church with. Hello, Mr. Holman. He would pay me $30 a week to cut his grass every week. All right, that was my first job. And remember, at the time, I was like 12, 13, 14. So through my anecdotal experience, right, I'm learning all this stuff on paper. But through anecdotal experience, I come to the conclusion that poor people are poor because they're either lazy or stupid. Because everything makes sense on paper, right? Everything makes sense on paper right here, right? Spend less than what you make, save and invest the difference. Here's the different asset types you can choose, right? Inflation, why that's bad, but technically it's also good at the same time because we're gaslighting you with Keynesian economics bullshit. But I came to the conclusion that the reason why my family was poor was because they were either lazy or stupid. So then I get the bright idea of when I'm 16, I'll obviously get a job and I'll work really hard and save up all my money. And I'll just be like that, bro. I'll just every time I get a job, or I'll just save more than I make and shit. Obviously, like you dogs. So then, I turned 16 and I got my first job at McDonald's. Okay. And McDonald's pays you bi-weekly every 2 weeks. And for what I thought at the time, I thought I worked pretty hard. I thought I put in some effort and I thought I put in a lot of hours on that clock. You know what I'm saying? McDonald's is McDonald's is a very simple and easy job, but it is a very stressful job, a very repetitive job, a very irritating and annoying job. The sooner AI takes that shit, the better. But anyways, my first 2 weeks there, I got paid. It might have been my first 3 weeks because when you get paid bi-weekly, depending on when you get hired, it may be 3 weeks before you get paid. But whatever, 2 to 3 weeks after working at McDonald's, I got my first paycheck, and that shit was $155. And I was like, I think I got it. I think the reason why niggas are poor is because these niggas aren't getting paid enough. And so I had to go. At the time, I was smoking weed, the carts and shit, right? That's when I just started, 15, 16. And I was like, you know what? Fuck it, bro. So I started trapping, dog. I took that paycheck of 155. I bought a fuck ton of carts and I started trapping, bro. And I was trapping from the ages of 16 to 20. And I was selling everything, bro. Fucking weed, Molly, cocaine, acid, DMT, Xanax, shrooms. But we don't do this shit no more, right? I'm a citizen now. Okay, so anyway, I figured to myself, right? The dollar is losing value rapidly. I don't see myself going to college because I'm not taking out a massive fat loan. I'm not gonna be a goyim, you know what I'm saying, and get some. I'm not gonna take out 6 figures of debt just to get a degree I might be able to use. So I'm not going to college, obviously, right? And so the plan was at the time was to just start investing now through drugs, right? So the plan was to run up the drug money, and then when I turn 18, put that into stocks. And what I kind of did was, obviously, if I did, drugs 16 to 20, I just did stocks and drugs 18 through 20. And the problem with selling drugs is that there's cash flow, but there isn't really capital appreciation, right? It's just a job. You're always on the re-up. You can expand larger and larger, but I refuse to hire employees, you know what I'm saying? I don't want to work with other people like that, so only so much one guy can do. And anyway, it didn't really work out to the best of my thought process, what looked like it could be. But maybe that's for another video. Who knows? But 18, I got into the stock market, and I was really confident about that shit because even though I couldn't buy stocks before I was 18, like 12 years old up to 18 years old, I was studying the stock market. I wanted to know how stocks work and shit because I was like, this is where all the millionaires are made from, right? Other than like fucking hoarding homes and real estate, and I can never fucking afford a house in the first place, right? And so when I got into stocks, bro, I used Webull. They're a garbage platform. I don't support Webull anymore. Fuck Webull. If you know, you know, but whatever. Back in the day when I was buying and trading stocks on Webull, my portfolio was very mid, you could say. I had some McDonald's, I had some Tesla, I had some NIO. This NIO was this Chinese company that I thought was gonna like flip Tesla for some reason. I was on my Moonboy shit back then, bro. I didn't even study or put any research into NIO, bro. I just fucking bought NIO because someone told me to buy it. Yeah, whatever, bro. I had like 10 or 12 positions of like tech stocks, food stocks, and then I was at a friend's house. We'll call him. His name's Alex. Hey, Alex. So anyway, he was talking about Bitcoin, and that was the first time I heard of Bitcoin. The first time I heard of Bitcoin was, let's say, 20, 20, 2018, 2019, about. I don't know exactly. Whenever it was at like 70K per coin. Oh, so like COVID time, yeah. Like so, like he's talking about like 70K. He was like, "Hey Gary, there's this thing called Bitcoin. I have some. I think you should look into it." And I checked the price of this Bitcoin thing, and it was at 70,000 per coin. And I was like, "Oh, this is like that digital money for rich people. I can't buy a whole coin. No, thank you." Anyways, right? So I stuck to stocks. And I also bought some Ethereum because I thought, well, I can't buy a whole Bitcoin, but I can buy a little bit of Ethereum and then trade that into Bitcoin. You know what I'm saying? Like the unit bias, the altcoin brain rot shit. But anyways, I got some Ethereum and I'm sticking to my stocks, and I'm really focused on like the dividend paying stocks. I want to like get dividends just to reinvest them into more stock to get dividends, to reinvest them to get more stock. I was obsessed with the cash flow of stocks, you know what I'm saying? Which was another reason why I think most people don't buy Bitcoin, is because it doesn't produce cash like stocks, but Bitcoin isn't a stock, it's money, right? Like, so when did shit go awry? The COVID crash, right? Stocks fell like 40%, crypto fell like 70%, NFTs went to zero basically. My stock portfolio was down like 50%, and I was stuck holding that bag for like well over a year and a half, right? And then when I turned 19, 20-ish, events happened to where I could no longer sell drugs. You know what I'm saying? So I was kind of stuck for a bit. I didn't want to fucking sell my stocks at a loss, but I couldn't sell drugs anymore. And so now the money's moving real slow because now I just have to work this regular job at Jimmy John's and shit, at Walmart and shit. You know what I'm saying? And I'm thinking like, damn, what's the next move? You know? And I think back to Bitcoin, right? And now at this point in time, I'm working at like a movie theater in Bay City or some shit, right? And I'm on the Webull app, and I see that the price of Bitcoin is at $15,000 per coin. By this time, I'd forgotten about it, but I don't know how long it's been, but it was at 15,000 per coin. And I was looking at it and I was like, huh, I guess this digital currency thing isn't going to take off, right? Like, no one wants this shit. It's at 15K. And I ignored it. I went about my day, you know what I'm saying? And then some time went by and it went up to 25K per coin. And that's when I was taking a shit on the toilet. And I was like, this is it. I FOMO'd in, okay? I started buying in right there at 25K. And then I kind of, every week or every time I got paid, I'd buy some more, buy some more, buy some more. And I'd watch it go up, 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 and up. But then by the time it got to like $40,000 per coin, I realized I had no idea what I owned. It was, as far as I could tell, it was just a digital unit on my screen that I could send back and forth to people. But I didn't even know I could send it back and forth to people because it was on a fucking exchange. That's how fiat brained I was, all right? I literally got into this shit thinking, all right, bet I'm gonna buy it 25K and I'm gonna cash out at like, I don't even know when I'll cash out at some point, right? I'm gonna cash out at some point. I'm never cashing out now. So after it hit like 40K, I was like, holy shit, I have no idea what I actually own. So hopped on YouTube, hopped on Google, hopped on Wikipedia, you know what I'm saying? Did some little Satoshi Nakamoto Bitcoin white paper, hash rate, SHA-256, difficulty adjustment, atom bag. The fuck is Bitcoin Cash? I went down that rabbit hole, and within like 3 months, not even, I was convinced absolutely that Bitcoin was the greatest asset on the planet. And once you get on the Bitcoin rabbit hole, you go into like the banking system and shit, and then that ties back all the way to when I was 12 or 14. And then I realized that nobody knows how money works. Fucking nobody. Because here I am at 12 years old studying personal finance and economics, right? And then learning how stocks and real estate and bonds work, all right? And then finding Bitcoin. Most people stop at the stocks and bonds and real estate, all right? And then like forget like central banking, right? That's you got to go through Bitcoin to even like actually understand that shit low key, or unless you're like a gold bug or a silver bug. But even then, gold and silver, that's still like within the stocks, real estate, and bonds bubble. You still have to tap into the Bitcoin to understand that that is the solution to destroy central banking. And at like 50K per Bitcoin, I started like, okay, I gotta start telling people about this shit. I gotta start orange pilling the fam, orange pilling friends, and fuck all listen to me. And that's why after almost 3 years of yapping to the empty void, I've started this YouTube channel so that somebody on this dead internet will tap into what I fucking tapped into. And you know, over 3 years of buying and holding Bitcoin, I won't say how much I have, right? But I have tripled my savings. All right? Like, by just buying Bitcoin and doing nothing over the past 3 years, I have tripled my savings. My standard of living has decreased in price threefold. Everything around me is 3 times cheaper relative when measured in sats Bitcoin. I think that's fucking awesome. And I'm in this shit for the long haul. I genuinely believe Bitcoin will become the world reserve asset. It'll be the first layer of all economic trade. And how do I wrap this story up? I was cutting grass, selling drugs, got jobs, got into stocks, selling drugs didn't go too well. Oh yeah, and then after some time, right, the stock market bounced back. I sold off all my stocks, put it into Bitcoin. Then I cashed out my Roth IRA. I only had 2K in that bitch anyway, and I put that into Bitcoin. I cashed out my Roth IRA and put it into Bitcoin last summer, actually. I hesitated to do that shit for so long because of like the fucking taxes and fees for withdrawing early. But I said fuck that shit because I checked like the all-time return. I've only made like a 4% gain on my Roth IRA since I had it at like 18, right? And I'm 23 now. So at 22, I was like, fuck that shit. I cashed out that fucking shit and I put it into fucking Bitcoin. Peace out. You know, that was the rant. That's how I discovered Bitcoin. I woke up at a young age and realized I was poor. I wanted to figure out why I was poor. I thought it was because my parents were lazy and stupid, but nah, it turns out the system is broken. But I didn't know why the system was broken. I thought it was capitalism. It's not capitalism. I thought it was greedy business owners. Those are both symptoms of the problem. You know, they're both symptoms of an illness called bad money. And then once you walk into Bitcoin, it clicks in your head that the problem is banking, right? The problem is fiat money. The problem is debt. And then you go into like, well, who owns the banks and who issues the debt? And then, now you're a racist. Welcome to iFunny. Shout out to iFunny. Shout out to Bitcoin. Shout out to the Bitcoiners. And peace out, YouTube.